Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to start our reading revision today for AILET 2026. So this will be your final reading revision. And I hope you have solved the sheet that is given in the bio in the link, because the revision live class is based on questions and different types of questions based on reading comprehension that you can expect in the AILET 2026 paper. So we are going to spend time on different types of passages. With every passage, I will take central theme question. With every passage, I'm going to take tone question. With every passage, I'm also going to take some reasoning-based questions that are there in AILET papers. And with every passage, I will take meaning in context questions. So I hope you all are ready for this last revision for AILET 2026. And I hope you have dusted your pants, you have pulled up your socks after the Clat exam. And remember, as I always maintain, let's get up and start the fight again. What you did in the Clat paper, let's wait for the result. I'm sure everyone is going to get a result deserving of their effort. And now all we have to do is prepare for the next exam and the next exam. Because every turn in your life, you are going to get exams. At every turn, you have to do some exam. Some are called exams. And otherwise, your whole life is a series of tests that you take. You succeed in some. You need to try harder in others. So see them as not failures, but try harder. So that's what we are doing today. Just as Clat got over all our last revision exercises, last revision for legal, last revision for critical reasoning, last revision for reading. So lined up ahead are also some last revisions for grammar, for legal, and GK you are doing every day. Analytical reasoning you just did. Critical reasoning is coming up tomorrow. So just sit down, concentrate on this worksheet. This is an excellent worksheet. I hope all of you solve it and then follow me here on the board. So the first passage that you see here is a passage on how Guwahati's Anga Art Collective, were members of the Anga Art Collective were detained by the police, and the comments of the author on why what they did was not something that should have been punished or penalized. So the author tries to comment on this by comparing the Indian Penal Code punishment on defacement of property, because defacement means putting art or graffiti or paint, which is not the same as destruction of property, right? And the author focuses on this, asks questions, focuses on this through the definitions of defacement or destruction, whether defacement is carried there or not, right? And how in Assam, this is even less detailed as compared to Delhi, but definitely something which we don't find in the Indian Penal Code, but we do find in the UK laws. So if you read further, there is a comparison made with the UK. So let's focus on how we are reading this. So this is a gist of this thing. Now, graffiti has an ambiguous status as art and damage both in most parts of the world, right? So there is ambiguity involved here. These art forms are not really recognized as modes of offense by law or its branches, and most of it is decided as per the discretion of the surveillance body. So therefore, they fall into ambiguity, and the penalty, any kind of penalization on graffiti, therefore, is mostly on the discretion of the body. So the subject of Anga Art Collective murals was Gogoi, right? And Akhil Gogoi was someone who was arrested in the CAA protests, and therefore these 4 artists were arrested. So the author is trying to explain, and then after every explanation, the author poses a question. How could he explain whitewashing of some graffiti and not others? So this question mark is not really a question, but it is a thought-provoking line. It is a line where the author is trying to say there is something fishy, right? So if you notice in this set, I'm going to take up select questions. In this set, this pattern of writing where you are bringing up some kind of argument through data also, and then as you are progressing with your argument, instead of coming out with direct statement conclusions, you pose thoughts in the form of questions. You pose thoughts in the form of questions. This type of writing is known as rhetoric, because you see rhetorical questions over here. So the author is not asking you, the author is giving you thought-provoking questions. Anything which caused adverse publicity was not allowed. He told me this could have meant several things. Did he mean defamation? Right? So how could he explain whitewashing some graffiti and not others? So some graffiti was allowed. So if there is a direct law on graffiti, then everyone should be arrested. But why was only a particular set of people arrested and their graffiti was whitewashed? So these thought-provoking questions are questions that the author is posing at the reader, giving the reader enough data to reach an answer which the author would like to reach. And therefore, this type of writing is rhetorical. Right? So if you see the pattern of this writing, it defines graffiti as per a legal entity in the Indian Penal Code system. Graffiti as a legal entity in the Indian Penal Code system finds lack of any proper law and says there is no centralized ambit. The defacement laws, because this can't be grouped with destruction of public property. And the author says it is different. Both of them are different. Compares it with the UK. So gives us enough perspective and then takes up so a perspective is set. After the setting of the perspective, the author takes a case in point and analyzes its legality. So this case in point is in Assam, where 4 graffiti artists were particularly arrested, right? So this case in point is described here. Again, flaws are seen and questions are asked. So the tone is the very first question that you see here, and that tone therefore becomes rhetorical, as you can see. And then look at these other questions. So it could have just been analytical, but it is more than analytical. So remember, when we are choosing rhetorical and not choosing analytical, we are not saying that there is no analysis in the passage. There is an analysis in the passage. But is it stopping at that? So if we don't choose an answer as descriptive, you can't say, ma'am, but there is a description here. Of course, there is a description there. Every passage will have some description. Without the description, no analysis is possible, no rhetoric is possible. So descriptive definitely is there. But is it stopping at descriptive? So large tones like descriptive, analytical, they're always going to be there. But if it is more than that, if more things are being done, more than analysis is being done. For example, here rhetorical questions were posed. Similarly, to the description, is it stopping at description or more than the description is being done? Then you have to choose the more part of the tone. You can't choose the most basic tone and say, okay, it is descriptive. So remember, every passage will have descriptions, every passage can have analysis, but then it's the author criticizing after the analysis, then it ceases to be analytical and it goes into a polemical tone. Or if the author is praising after the analysis, then it ceases to be an analytical and goes into laudatory. Or if both sides are discussed, then it goes into critical. In this case, the author is clearly trying to convince us of some wrongdoing and asking rhetorical questions. So now it becomes rhetorical. Right? Have you understood how we work with tones? So this is a specific detailed question. Now you have to answer these questions by going back and checking in the office, right? So in question number 2, if you see, why is it informal or why is it ambiguous? Because naturally there is no such legality or legal enforcement of this, and mostly it's left to the discretion. This is just a fact. This fact is not showing why we are calling it ambiguous, right? This fact just says these are two separate things. Now, after this, if defacement finds a mention in the IPC, then it's fine. So C is given in the passage, but is not answering the question of ambiguity. Anything written in the passage cannot just be the answer unless it is answering that specific question, right? So your answer becomes both A and B. Again, a specific detailed question, answer key I'm going to share in the same link so you can solve and check your answer. I'm going to do only select questions to try to help you understand how to read and answer questions. What showcases the monitoring the content of these public artworks often guided by the political atmosphere? So why is the author talking about the political atmosphere, isn't it? So so the author first tries to establish the fact that there was no law, but that is okay. Even if there is no law, still one can be neutral and fair in the way this graffiti Anga Art Collective guys were treated. But what is adding to the suspicion? The rhetorical question. The rhetorical question is adding to the suspicion where you decide that some graffiti is fine, but other is not fine, right? So this discretion, was it exercised with neutrality? No. According to the author, choosing what goes and what does not go shows some kind of politics around the issue, right? So again, this is a fact which is written before this. With this fact, the author is trying to say that A, there is again no clear law. Now in exercising this current anti-graffiti penalty, a lot of politics was done around the issue, because if you are against graffiti, then erase everything. Why did you allow something to stay and others to be removed, right? So this is how we choose our answers. Then look at passage 2, which is very different in tone from passage 1. Passage 2 talks about, or rather the author is focusing entirely, if you read, on what really should be done when it comes to the climate combat plan that the Prime Minister has targeted for 2070. So the author, if you notice the structure of the passage, you know, the structure of the passage really helps you understand the central theme and tone. So the author tries to structure the passage by saying, okay, this was the goal. Now, how do we execute the goal? So the author comes out with facts, and look at this question, which is different from the previous passage question. This is a question where the author is giving the answer straight away. This is question answer format. The question is a topical question and the author answers that question. So the author poses the problem as a question and then gives the solution alongside. It is not a question left to the audience to decide or think about something. So where do we stand today? The author is giving you an answer, right? So this is a typical method of, you know, giving a question followed by an answer to catch the attention of the reader. And this kind of writing is usually done in passages which are more of advice. Should be done passages or advice passages. Should be done passages or advice passages. So if you see, the author starts by taking one should be done, then moves to renewable capacity. We need so much, but discoms are broken. Then politics around the whole energy thing. So the author gives you an example. So the author is looking and posing problems in the sector, and then trying to tell us how it can be held, or how it can be done, or what is going to prevent us from reaching this 2070 goal, right? So simple passage, and I don't think you would miss out on the tone here, which is the tone question. Let's quickly take up the tone question. So advice, cautious advice, do you see it there? Cautious advice. It's not neutral or detached at all, because the author is using a lot of should be done, need it, what we need, what is hampering us. So need, should, these are the keywords that you notice. Need and should, these are the keywords that you notice that takes you to your tone, right? Then another way of asking you fact-based questions is, what is not the thing? That means 3 are given, 1 is not given, right? So this type of question, definitely you have to do a fine reading or a quick reading. Now in this fine or quick reading, you notice that the author talks about lesser dependence. So you have to see every paragraph it is given, very easy to read. Focusing on renewables, so this is another advice that is given. A consensus among political parties, this is given in the Punjab example, where the Punjab thing was there, right? So the answer becomes all of the following. So if you see all of the following, it can be a trap option also, because many of you see A is given, B is given, you don't focus whether C is given or not, and you mark all of the following. 80% cases, this can be a right strategy. 2 are given, third must be given. Or in that 20% where it falters would be, you have read these 2 in a rush, you missed one option is not the same as the passage, and you did not see C. If you had checked C, and if you had found that, okay, C is definitely not given, then you would have read A and B closely. So when you see all of the above, you read A and B in a rush, try to slow down a little bit, read all the 3 options. If you think one of the options is clearly not given, then go back and reread A and B, so that you see if you have missed something in the reading of A and B, right? So as I said, 80%, 2 are given, pretty much all of the above would be the answer. In this case, it is the answer. But don't rush into C, so that you don't miss out on those 1 or 2 marks, right? Then let's come to another question type here. What can be inferred from the passage? Now, every time we are doing inference questions, there are 2 types of problems that come forward. Many of you ask, ma'am, it is written, how can it be inferred? So remember, Indian papers, especially Clat paper or NLU Delhi paper, while they use the word infer, don't be surprised that the correct answer is pretty much reworded or given in the passage. So the correct answer is not purely an unstated inference. So do not doubt your answer there. Even if it is given in any form and it is only reworded, never mind. Pick it up as an option if the other answers are incorrect, right? So if you see here, definitely some of these answers are incorrect. We can't say this. Renewables are less cost efficient as compared to nuclear energy. We have no data to say all of this. So when you read this, you will understand, right? This is given. It is given as one of the problems, but it is the only correct answer. So will I mark an inference answer if it is pretty much stated? Yes. Even if the option is a reworded format, it is an acceptable answer. in light of other options that are completely incorrect, right? Now, this kind of wholesome remarks, state governments have failed to do so. So these kind of things where the answer is over exceeding the scope of the passage, they are wrong. This, of course, is something which is one of the advice and problems given by the author. So that will be our answer. And if you look at the central idea question, now in this central idea question, what is the central idea? Now look at this, the timeline would have to be extended. This is like a prediction or a course of action. These are not central ideas. The author has not said anything about timelines. The author has shared problems and has given some advice on how to tackle them. But has the author categorically stated timeline? No. There needs to be major overhauls in the energy sector to meet the target. Now this looks like a good advice. So look at this word, need and should. Since this passage is advice, this looks like a good answer, right? This is one of the things mentioned, one of the facts mentioned, and this is, what type of answer is this? This is a mistaken reversal answer. So in central idea, one fact from one paragraph will not be an answer. The course of action type of answer will not be an answer. Need and should is matching with our advice, so this is an answer. Look at this. The author has said it is difficult to meet renewable energy because of the current regime and how things are running. But will we meet it if this is overhauled? So if I'm saying we won't be able to do it because, or we will have problem doing it or trouble doing it because there are a lot of issues. Now, if the issues are solved, will the target be achieved? Still, maybe it is not achieved. So if I say, okay, if the issues are solved, the target will be achieved, is a mistaken reversal case. Mistaken reversal cases are never the answers. So these are some of the points that I wanted to highlight. So please study this. Once you have solved the sheet, you can look at the video again and understand this method of answering. All right, then we go to the third passage, which is a narrative. So I'm taking up all different types of tones or styles of writing so that this serves as your last revision. So it is a story of what happened at the trial after the most famous sedition trial after Tilak, at the Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi trial of 1922. What did he tell the judge? How did the judge react? So it's like a nice story. It's not anecdotal, but it's like a nice slice of storytelling in the life of Mahatma Gandhi. So definitely this is a narrative passage. You will see the tone question given ahead. So that's a narrative passage. And it talks about how the concept of disaffection was brought by Mahatma Gandhi, and how Mahatma Gandhi said that you can't make me love you. I don't love you. I'm not going to break the law. I'm not going to be violent, but I choose the right to be disaffected toward you. I don't see that I have to show my loyalty towards you as long as I'm not breaking laws. But Mahatma Gandhi said that it has been shown in the past in this very quote that disaffection is something that you have punished, right? So there are a lot of follow-up questions here, but if you see the tone, which is question number 17, is narrative tone, because it's a story. It's a story of the trial. Who said what, right? Then a lot of good questions have been asked on this passage. It's a good sheet that we have made at CP4U, where it said, what would Gandhiji support? So naturally, it is another way of asking you the central theme of the stance of Gandhiji, right? So Gandhiji did not say no legal provision, never to punish it, no kind of restriction, right? Gandhiji said that I have a right to be disaffected as long as I'm not causing or inciting violence. So this matches with it. So it's not as if Mahatma Gandhi has said there has to be a blanket rule on disaffection. You have to see whether my disaffection is leading to any kind of violence. So this is a good question. Then you have bold-faced portions in the question. So if you see the bold-face, the first bold-face that is there is India is less manly under the British rule. All right. So Gandhiji's position. So let's look at the bold faces first. So India is less manly. This is the first bold face. This bold face is given to support this conclusion. The conclusion is I have a right to be disaffected. You can't make me love you. And why is Gandhiji being disaffected? Because this is now the reason. So this is the reason. So Gandhiji's stance is supported by this reason, right? So let's look for reason and let's look at the second bold face. The second bold face is my experience of political cases has led me to the conclusion. So this second bold face, the job that it does is the fact that Gandhiji knows that with the stance that Gandhiji has taken, the outcome is not going to be good, right? So first one is not the conclusion, it is the supporter of the conclusion, right? So it's not the conclusion, it is premise in support of intermediate. No, it is supporting the stance, right? The stance of disaffection. And the second is actually an outcome of that stance which Gandhiji feels is going to happen. So this looks like our best answer because these two are clearly wrong, right? It is not direct evidence, it is actually a reason. Evidence would be where we are giving data or some kind of hard evidence. Here, the reason is something which Gandhiji feels, it's not hard evidence. So this is option C. Then of course you have regular main point, but there is also a weakened question which I would like to discuss in this passage. What would weaken Gandhiji's argument? So Gandhiji's whole argument of disaffection is based on the fact that it is non-violent. So any option that talks about violence, right? So you have to see how Gandhiji has supported the stance. The stance has been supported by making a plea of the fact that no violence has been caused by Gandhiji's disaffection, right? So now if you talk about violence, then the whole thing gets set aside, right? So that will be something that we can look at to weaken Gandhiji's argument. So disaffection against the government may cause disaffection against the law of the land, which is fine as long as you are not breaking the law. So option 1 is in sync. You needn't love the land as long as you are not breaking any laws. Some governments believe expression of disaffection could lead to violence in some cases, right? So, okay, maybe. But look at option D. People who express unabated disaffection without intending to promote violence tend to incite violence against it in future if not checked. So if the British government punishes Gandhiji today, it is fine because maybe right now Gandhiji has not incited any violence. But if today we leave Gandhiji, we will see that unabated disaffection may in future make the same person be violent. So we have to support the British stance of arresting Mahatma Gandhi and punishing Mahatma Gandhi, not for something he has not done today, but something that could be a follow-up later on in the future. So this looks like the best option because it says, yes, today there is no violence, so there is no ground to punish Mahatma Gandhi, but if left unchecked, it can really escalate the situation. So a good question and a good set of options. All right. Next, we move to the fourth passage. And here now, this passage, if you see, is basically, a passage where we are looking at the stringent laws of Kashmir and Northeast. Right? Now, what is the tone of this passage as you read it? So this passage is kind of a protest, if you see, where the author is trying to make a case for how the violence here is normalized under the state narrative of security. So be it Kashmir or be it the Northeast, armed forces are free to use violence under the pretext of security and patriotism. So one would think that the author is going to come down to his or her own experience or cases, but then you see that Arthur Zia's resisting disappearance, the author brings the first paragraph to sink in with this book. Now, once the book has been introduced, very typical of AILET papers of the past, where book reviews are very, very common. Now you know that the whole passage is going to discuss the book, right? So this is a book critique or a book discussion. And the author says that it resonates with the struggles, silences, and shared grief of families in Northeast India. And now the author starts talking about the book, that the impact it has and how it is a testimony to the thousands of lives in the conflict zones. Right? So now the whole passage, book continues to happen. The ethnography is about women. Some examples from the book. So Arthur Zia, she uses disappearance. So talks about how Zia uses terminology in the book, right? Talks about mothers and half widows. And then the author brings in two types of protests, jalus and muzahira, right? So the primary purpose of the passage is to discuss the book. So look for that answer. The primary purpose of the passage is to discuss the book. Now, the whole passage is about the book. The first paragraph puts the book into perspective, isn't it? So that is the primary purpose. While we are discussing this, the counterinsurgency programs of missing people, disappeared people, and the unchecked force that is used by state in the name of security, but the author puts this through the book written by Zia, right? And then there is a parallel reasoning question on what would be a muzahira and what would be a jalus, and how would you distinguish between the two. So between the two, how are we going to do it? So if you look at the first one, killing of an armed rebel fueled by anger and emotion. So this is sudden. This can't be a muzahira because it has to be planned. This has to be planned. It's not a reaction. So this is a reaction. Whereas a muzahira is a planned activity, right? So it is a planned protest which is highlighted in 2 and 3. So something has happened. Now you plan a muzahira to protest it, right? It's not something that you do as a reaction out of emotion. So that would be 2 and 3. So anything which is described in the passage and you have to choose an example that fits the description, you have to be careful. That means it's a proper theme and inference answer, right? So when we read about muzahira and the planned activity, planning means, yes, of course, there is grieving and emotion, but it's not a reactionary emotional, right? So again, you have the inference question. So which is pretty much given. So if you look at the 20th thing, basically this kind of protest or any kind of protest does not mean that it is going to fuel violence. And rest of the options here in 20th were incorrect. And then if you look at the tone of the author, so the tone of the author, it is a book discussion, that would be critical. So that is 23A. So we did narrative, we did critical, we did rhetorical. So we have done all these broad tones. So we have done a book discussion, we have done a narrative tone of a little anecdotal thing from Mahatma Gandhi's trial. All right. And then we have also covered a rhetorical passage, and then we have covered an advisory passage. So if you read the passages, you will see the stark difference in how they are written. And now we are going to take up another very, very interesting passage where the author is talking about a lot of live emotion of the footballer. Sorry. Now this passage is not, the author is not Dini. The author is narrating or telling us of what Dini felt and what Dini did. So if I am telling you about the emotional turmoil and all the protest and all the work that someone has done, then I'm only telling you that. And that kind of passage is called reporting, right? So this is a reporting. So it tells you systematically who this footballer is, what this footballer is trying to do, and what this footballer has set up, and what is happening over here, right? The trust and how the this footballer is trying to get the government to, you know, look seriously at African American literature and studies, right? So this is reportage. So let's look at this tone. So everywhere you see, it is indirect speech. This is indirect speech. There is no direct commentary. It is only telling us what the other person has done. Do you see that? So what is the central theme of this passage? The central theme of this passage is, what Dini is trying to do is how, if you are not making black and minority mandatory studies, then people are being brought up in a very different world. That's what the footballer is trying to vouch for, and that's the reporting on. The reporting is on the footballer, Dini, who is trying to tell the government to do this. And that's the central theme of this passage. Of course, rest of the things you can find out from the passage. This passage, what is not true, again, another way of asking you fact-based questions. Check each option well and go back and mark the right answer. Again here, eerie, now this kind of word meaning you have to know. There is no way that you can just, you know, find out from the passage. And we have seen it in Clat also this time. Most of the meanings you had to know, most of the terminology, phrases you had to know, right? So some of this stuff, if you do not know what it is, can be a little bit of an unfortunate case, but there is nothing that you can do now about it. There is something that you should have done 2 years ago when you were building your word power. And it is reportage, which means I'm reporting what the other person is trying to tell us. And finally, a nice passage on Dungeons and Dragons. 2 grammar questions in this passage. Both the boxes X and Y have to be filled with the correct preposition. So grammar class is tomorrow, and I hope you can do a quick revision on that, because sometimes you can get grammar questions through the passage only, through the lines. So the correct preposition for X, what would it be as you look at yourself? So it's simple ones, but then, you know, something that you should get correct. So it tries to talk about this game, Dungeons and Dragons, which became a huge game during COVID. And in fact, Dungeons and Dragons is the game behind Stranger Things, which has come out with a season 5. And I hope you write a good AILET exam and then you can enjoy Stranger Things on 25th December. So this game, it talks about this game where games like D&D do not simply imitate the real world, but rather offer a great insight about shifting labels. When you look closely at the mechanisms, you find the depth. There is a game master and you have to do unexpected actions. So there is this terminology that is used, what is lawful good, where you want. So it's not just about being good. You do a good act even if you break the law. But if you want to be good by the law, so you're being good by the book, but then you break. So it's not as if you've become bad if you break the law. You may have broken the law for something good, but now you are no more lawful good, you are neutral good. You are good, maybe you have broken laws. So this concept they have described, and a question on this concept has been asked. Right? So this is a fact-based question. 31st is a fact-based question. 32 I want to discuss. Why is the author using Aristotle? The author uses any example, whether it is Aristotle or Plato, to support his or her viewpoint. So definitely Aristotle's example may have been used to support the view of the author. So it could be to undermine a popular notion, but it could be to uphold a notion. So you have to go back and look at Aristotle's example as used by the author to whether these two are happening or not. But a good answer is to validate. So if a big celebrity word or a celebrity name or a master name has been used, 90% of the time it would be to validate the author or to support the author's stance, right? X and Y I told you are examples, and then I wanted to discuss 35. 35 neutral good example would be what? A has to reach the hospital in a rush to perform surgery on an accident victim, right? And steals the car. So that's a good thing. So you have broken the law, but you are still good. X serves as the empress of Dragonstone most loyally, but helps the convict escape capital punishment for stealing a bread slice. So there is no law breaking here because she is the empress. D dutifully serves and continues to be dutiful, so it is lawful good. D lies, steals, and even kills, so that it's definitely bad. So what is neutral good here? Option A is neutral good because the good part is there. They are trying to save a life, but they broke a law. Empress can do anything. She can make her own laws, so it's irrelevant. C is lawful good only, and D is bad. And what is the style of writing of the author? The author is not making any argumentative points. The author is just telling you something. A nice perspective is being shared with you. So such type of writing you can see is conversational. Browsing means the author is trying to tell you to act, to do, get up, something. No, the author is just sharing an insight on a game called D&D, right? So this insight is just being shared with you, voiced with you. The author is just trying to tell you, okay, this is the game and this is what happens, and these are the labels. So this is conversational. So it's more than informative. It is more of author's version of the game. If the game were only described, it would be objective or informative, but it's the author's version of the game, so it is conversational, right? So that's it from my side today, children. This is a very good sheet. It has got all types of tones in it, different styles of passages. Read it and have a look at this discussion again. See how I have tried to answer questions, what I've tried to tell you for inference, central idea or central theme, and definitely the tones. So I hope you have a good exam. And this was RC revision from my side, Surabhi Sahai at Clat Possible. Thank you.